Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's webcast. My name is Zina M. Pagan, ARS Marketing Manager, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we begin making our marketing attrition dreams come true, I'll review our house rules. We are aiming to provide the best webcast experience possible. You can help us execute this by keeping yourself muted and keeping your computer web cameras turned off. The audio will be streamed. This means that you will be able to hear us through your computer speakers. However, if you prefer to use a teleconference option, please use the information provided on your screen. Additionally, I will post the information on the chat box during the presentation. Should you have any questions during the session, please send these to me using the same chat box. I'll review the questions at the end of the presentation. ARS does not own the copyrights to the presentation. However, the session will be recorded. If you would like to view the recorded event, the file will be available within 2 weeks from today. We are extending the conversation on social media. If you would like to join us, please use hashtag #ARSWebcast. If you're interested in hosting a webcast, please contact me at zina@thears.org. Our next webcast will be held on April 19th with Facebook on bringing our audience's attention to streaming. And if you're in the New York City area tomorrow, the ARF will hold the inaugural auto event for auto marketers for Auto Week on cross-platform data strategies. And last but not least, join us for our audience measurement conference in June. Currently, our early bird rate will save you $400. To take advantage of this, please register by April 30th. If you're interested in any of these events or other ARF programs, you can visit our website for further details or contact me at zina@thears.org. And without further delay, I present to you today's webcast, Revenue Intelligence, Taking Marketing Attrition from Pipe Dream to Reality with Nadeem Hossain, CEO and co-founder of BrightFunnel. Nadeem, are you with us? Can you hear me?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so please introduce yourself a little bit about what you do for BrightFunnel and what BrightFunnel does for the industry. And I now have passed over control to you.
Wonderful. So thank you, everyone, for having me today. I really look forward to the opportunity to hearing your questions at the end as well. Just a little bit about who BrightFunnel is. So you have some context. So BrightFunnel is a revenue intelligence platform for marketers. So this is powered by our patent-pending multi-touch attribution platform. And what the company does is we enable folks like Cloudera, Lionbridge, Ellie Mae, a range of business-to-business companies to connect marketing to revenue. And this is founded on the belief that we really think the key to accelerating revenue, which is something we all want, is to orchestrate the right marketing or sales touch at the right point in the customer journey. So that's why we started this company and pioneered this category called revenue intelligence. And this can be complex, as you'll see today, but we're trying to make it as easy as possible to enable decision making and ultimately more revenue for all of us. So a little bit about myself as I introduce the buyer journey. So when I was in my first marketing job as a product marketer now 17 years ago, the buyer's journey was very different. Digital hadn't influenced as many parts of the buyer journey as possible. There wasn't as much information out there, and there was less power, frankly, in the hands of the B2B buyer. So today's buyer journey is complex. We see in our network that a typical decision team is 6 to 8 people to make a decision for example, buying a piece of software or construction equipment or financial services. And there are multiple channels that your buyers frequent where you can reach them, where they're going to research products and where you can answer questions they might have. So as a marketer, not only do you need to be on top of a lot of channels that your customers are in, but you also have to make sure that you're speaking to all members of the decision team. This is something that distinguishes B2B marketing and sales from B2C. There are always multiple folks you're trying to influence, which adds complexity. So these elements and the fact that marketers now own more of that customer experience, customer interaction than ever before compared to their sales counterparts makes it difficult to figure out what to say, when to say it, and to whom. Part of what's going on here is that we marketers do a lot. So 17 years ago in my marketing team, when I was a junior marketer, half of these words wouldn't have made any sense. One of the things you see here is account-based marketing. That certainly is a very new thing that is in a lot of B2B marketers' minds, using multiple channels to reach accounts, not just individuals. But the idea of retargeting didn't exist 10 years ago. So a lot is happening. Our jobs as marketers and team members is evolving pretty dramatically, which means more responsibility, more power, but means we have to do a lot more as well. So in this situation, there's good news and bad news, I guess. A lot of the bad news is a lot of what we're doing as marketers, let's face it, is still based on guesswork, investing in channels, deciding how to interact with our customers. So the holy grail of marketing is still to turn that buyer journey into a science. The good news is that is now more and more possible because of the data and the insights that are now available. So ultimately what we're trying to do is, through analytics and data insights as marketers, we're trying to orchestrate the buyer journey. I introduced the concept of revenue intelligence. We define that as having the intelligence to take the right action at the right time in the buyer journey to drive that revenue. So that's now actually possible. We have different channels we can reach. We have the data, and we can reach the right customer at the right time with the right message. This is something we've all wanted to do for a long time, the idea of one-to-one marketing, personalization, but it's now becoming a reality thanks to data tools and channels that are out there. But this seems hard. So as marketers, how do we get to the bottom of this question? It's easy to say do the right thing at the right time, but what can we actually do? So our belief is that leveraging data to determine what marketing and sales touches work throughout the funnel is what's going to enable to orchestrate a better customer journey. Let's get into the details now. What data and insights should you look for? What should you track to orchestrate that buyer journey? This is not everything, but it's already a lot if it's new to you. So let me go through these points one by one. First, touch attribution. This is probably what we're most familiar with as marketers. What brings people into your funnel? What is the first thing that brought that person, or if it's an account, brought that account into your funnel? Multi-touch attribution is a slightly broader concept, or a very dramatically broader concept. On average, there are 18 touches in a B2B sale, and multi-touch attribution looks at all of those touches. We recently, in my own data, we closed a customer, an enterprise customer, that the lead to revenue cycle was 700 days. And in the old days, I would have looked at, before tools like BrightFunnel and the data that's out there, single touch attribution. Now I see 30 interactions, 20 different campaigns. It gives you much different insight into how to do your marketing. So multi-touch is a very, very important concept. Third, last touch attribution. Again, this is maybe self-explanatory, but oftentimes you care about not just what brought someone into the journey, but what's accelerating them to actually become a customer, that last touch. These last 2 points are slightly different concepts. So velocity is often ignored because it's hard to measure in B2B, but it's a very, very important concept because financial plans are made not just of numbers, but the timing of those numbers. So you can't just deliver revenue or leads, you've got to deliver them by a certain time. So velocity is critical to understand which parts of your mix are really helping to accelerate things. And finally, looking at full account analysis. This is understanding how everything adds up in order to determine the best path to sale for a specific account, which is comprised of multiple people. So with that said, what should you actually say? This is where the content comes in, the idea of the offer that you're putting in front of your audience. And I'll focus on content marketing because it's so much of what we in B2B are doing these days. So content marketing is the fuel for all of your demand generation efforts. Before you can figure out when in the buyer journey to interact with someone or what channel to use, you have to have a sense of what you should be communicating, and that's your content. To use a simple framework that I've borrowed here, if you see the various stages, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel, at each of these stages, there are different types of content that will resonate. And this is fairly standard across different types of business-to-business sales. Whether you're buying complex treasury management services as a business, or enterprise software, or construction equipment, there's going to be some journey that you're going through from awareness to evaluation to purchase. At the beginning, the awareness stage, it might be things that are explaining what it is that you do and what sort of value you might get by using your products or services. Towards the end, things that are more in the business case development stage, like pricing and demos and consultations and so forth. So how do you know for sure that you're sending that right content and message? You have a hypothesis, you looked at the funnel, you decided how you think your buyer wants to interact with you. Maybe you've done some focus groups or they've told you, but now you've actually got to quantify it and measure it. So here it's really important to understand what content, let's say in the beginning of the journey, brings people in. And there's a little bit of detail here that I'll walk you through. What we're showing here, in case you're wondering, these are actual screenshots from the Bright Funnel platform. Just as an illustration of this point, obviously you could be doing this much more manually. So first touch attribution, as you recall, is about that first thing that happened. So here it's telling me the first touch attribution for content downloads across a variety of different channels. So you see on the screenshot that's in the back a list of different types of content, whether it's an ebook or a case study that brought folks in for the first time. So content that sources your pipeline and revenue. So not just leads, but things that eventually became something valuable. That's sort of the important question to ask. And you see the details around the website landing pages and page views and so forth. But the high-level point is really, what is the content that's bringing someone in that eventually becomes revenue or pipeline? The next question towards the middle of the funnel is, great, so you brought people in. Maybe it's an enterprise sale and it is hundreds of days. You're going to care about not just things that bring people in, but what's accelerating someone through the funnel. This is where multi-touch attribution is really critical, because you can apply content, and obviously you can use advertising and promotion to get that content in front of people through channels, which we'll talk about in a second. But multi-touch lets you measure what content is helping move leads and people, as well as the overall account through the funnel. And you can look at this by an overall metric like attributed pipeline or attributed revenue, which we're talking about here, but also what's converting things at each stage. And B2B, we often use stage names like MQL, marketing qualified lead, SQL, sales qualified lead, and opportunity. Finally, looking at the bottom of the funnel, the last touch, what content converts people to becoming a customer? What's the last thing that's happening? Sometimes you look at before pipeline, sometimes revenue. Both are valid questions depending on your business. And this is important to make sure you're actually getting that the revenue through the door, not just interested people. So this is a simple framework so far, just 3 stages. You can imagine any number of stages depending on your business and its complexity. So it's important not just to see what's working at each different stage, but teams are often organized by channels and sort of content owners. You have to look at, is a specific piece of content still interesting? Maybe your audience is getting tired of it. We often talk about in the advertising world refreshing creative, but the same applies to content. Is it still resonating? And what we recommend is looking at the trend of the performance of your content. Again, by revenue, by pipeline. Are people still downloading? And that's sort of the action, but is that still generating pipeline for you quarter after quarter? Some things are evergreen, some things become stale pretty quickly. So with that said, let's talk about the marketing channels. We've talked about the content, i.e. the offers, and now let's talk about the channels where you should say what you're saying. So, just like the situation with the buyer's journey that we talked about at the beginning, there is a lot of complexity two marketing channels. Just taking, again, maybe I'm dating myself with the example of me as a young marketer. We didn't have social channels at all, let alone multiple social channels that are always evolving. That's just one example of a channel type that's evolving rapidly. So suffice it to say, it's very, very important to understand for your audience what channels are the ones that are resonating, that are most likely to resonate. So there's just a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of ways you could be interacting with them. So you have to look at both the channel and the campaign. And let's take a specific example. That channel might be something as simple as email. We're sending people emails. Or we're syndicating content through our advertising partners. But in those two examples, the specific campaign is just as important as the channel. The channel gives you some insight into email works, let's say in the middle of the funnel. But you obviously do care about what the specific email that was sent, what was its theme, what was its content. These are things that can be measured as well as looked at qualitatively, but both are important. Next, taking the framework of the buyer journey again, what channels are most effective to source the best accounts and leads? And its effectiveness is not just they work, you're also going to want to look at the ROI. But starting with the first part of that question, for a first touch, when someone's just becoming aware of what you do, what are the channels that are working? Chances are your first touch isn't going to be an expensive steak dinner with a small group of folks. And if it is effective, it's not going to be high ROI. It's going to be something like your website or your advertising campaigns. So this is where understanding what channel by stage is really important. The next question is what specific campaigns are bringing people in. And this is where, I say as a CEO now, I used to be a CMO, I'm personally not spending time in this anymore. I used to, but my team, my VP of marketing and her team, they're spending a lot of time optimizing every day, not just once a quarter, understanding what programs are working across every channel and which ones are not, so we can kill the low-performing ones and we can reinvest that money in things that really are working. Next, let's talk about the middle of the funnel. So not just sourcing, again, similar to the content, but what channels are accelerating people. For example, here you see the website shows up again, not surprising. Digital is very important, and a website is a unique asset that performs throughout the buyer journey, throughout the customer experience. So the question is, what channels are performing best in the later stages to accelerate folks? And this is a snapshot of our data from a short time period. We're seeing the various channels, and we drill down to understand what's influencing pipeline and revenue. Is there a difference between what's working mid-funnel and top of the funnel? You have finite dollars overall and per channel, so you want to optimize them where they're really going to be most effective. And finally, what specific campaigns are accelerating people? Just like the top of the funnel question, this is asking the question, what are the campaigns that are moving people through? And this is an interesting example. At the very top, you see we ran for a period of time a demo with a gift card offer. And there was two schools of thought. Well, do you really want to give someone a gift card? Is that weird? It is a little bit, but it's an experiment we ran. Or are they going to appreciate the thank you? They've got a busy day. We're looking at for them personally. It turned out to perform very, very well. And these weren't random folks. These are folks that are already interested. They know us. They're aware of us. They're in the pipeline. A little reminder that we're thinking of them really went a long way towards accelerating them. And you can think of similar questions that we were able to ask and answer throughout for different kinds of campaigns that we're doing. So now let's transition again. We've talked about what you should say, the content or the offer. We've talked about the channel, which is the where, how you're actually reaching your audience. A very, very important question that we're going to tackle last is the timing. So we talked about at the very beginning, the idea of the B2B buyer journey and accelerating revenue comes from the right interaction at the right time. So time is clearly a very, very important concept. And I would argue it's the one that we as B2B marketers are ignoring the most. So let's put it all together. Let's talk about the optimal timing for your content and for your campaigns. Now let's remember, everything in a business-to-business world should be mapped to your sales funnel. This is an example of what a revenue funnel might look like. Whatever you call those stages, everyone's got slightly different names, but you should be mapping your marketing efforts with those stages, not just the marketing stages, but as well as the sales stages. And you'll see that's really going to help you align with your sales team and also optimize your actions as much as possible. Next, making sure that, and this is a very important point on data, that we're connecting all of the leads and contacts on an account. On some days as a B2B marketer, I'm envious of our consumer counterparts who are selling a pair of shoes to one person. We don't have that luxury. There's multiple people on an account. And what that means is that there's often resulting data problems. Your sales team isn't attaching everyone to the sales opportunity in your CRM system. So there's multiple leads, contacts, there's going to be duplicates that are influencing an account. Thankfully, with lots of marketing tools, we're capturing all those at some point, but it doesn't mean we're associating them to the actual revenue and pipeline. So that's a really important point. So look at the full journey, including all of the influencers in that decision cycle. And that will then allow you to look at trends at an opportunity and account level, not just an individual person level, of what's working and what isn't working. Let's take an example of that. So this is showing an opportunity to see all the marketing activity within one account. So we can start to map the buyer journey. In this account, we're showing there are, on the left side here, there's 11 total contacts. And that's not atypical. Very, very common to have that many people. So you want to look at the full journey across all those folks, not just the one person that the salesperson attached, even if that one person's very, very important. And on the right side, you see that this is an actual journey for an actual customer of ours, now a customer of ours that we're going to keep innocent. But this is the journey they went through. For example, at the very top, you see there's a marketing boot camp, and there's multiple instances of that campaign because there's several people from that account that attended that, in this case, it's a virtual event to learn about, well, in this case, what we do, Bright Funnel. Back to the left side, so you see it's 11 total touches. Our first touch was a LinkedIn ad. The middle touches were a variety of interactions, trade show, infographic, digital content as well as in person. And last touch, again, content as well as live events. So there's really a mix of things that we, as B2B marketers, have to do to get this customer. Now let's look at a very important detail that is often a thorn in our side as B2B folks, is we can't take the full credit for what's going on, nor do we want to. You always have to go through a salesperson in B2B. And so measuring that interaction is very important to get credibility with the sales team. The buyer journey has sales and marketing touches. So where are the sales touches happening at an account level? Are they calls? Are they emails? What do those emails say? Those are all things that are very important for marketers to have an insight on. And this is an example of the marketing job getting bigger. It's the sales team's not going to figure this out. This part of the customer experience, the full funnel, is up to you guys. It's up to us as marketers to really understand what's going on. Another example of that level of detail in digging deeper is at a sales opportunity level, understanding for that specific sales opportunity or that account, what are the channels that are working. This helps you find patterns. Perhaps your accounts that are in Asia Pac and Europe behave differently from each other and from North America. You could look at an aggregate level or also an individual level. That becomes a very important insight to understand. Next, who are the folks that are involved? One question I often ask my team is, are we reaching enough executives at an aggregate level, at individual account level? If I see an account is really engaged, but all of the interaction is at a junior level, that might be a call to action for us to either redo our marketing mix for that segment, or more likely, it's going to be a tactical decision to do some executive outreach to try to get more direct interaction. Next, we talked about velocity early on. Let's revisit it here. This is an example of the kinds of metrics you might want to track when you're thinking about velocity. The concept isn't complicated. The execution often is. So here we're showing velocity by different channels. So we're answering the question, how long does it take for a lead to move from stage to stage when it's sourced or influenced by a specific channel. And the simple way to think about it is every channel has a different natural velocity. It could be for a variety of different reasons, but to understand what's going on is really important. If you, to pick a very simple example, if you have a very short-term, say 1 quarter financial goal, and all your channel investments are in things that are very effective, high ROI, but take forever, you may not be around to see the results of those campaigns. So having the right mix is very important. So now let's put it all together. Let's recap what we've seen today. So you want to track engagement per account and per segment. That's very important in B2B. The rise of account-based marketing is really surfing off of that insight that's now finally possible to execute on. But really in any kind of marketing, whether you have a very big audience or small audience, looking at segments as a marketer is just a very best practice and a basic way to analyze your data. Having that data is important, and you want to make sure you action on it. Next, you want to know what works for bringing people in, as well as accelerating them through your funnel. So there are different tactics at different stages. You also want to understand what works for different roles and titles. What works for a C-level executive may be very different than what works for the rest of the buying committee. And understanding that is going to give you insight, and again, it's going to give you credibility with sales. A lot of what we do in B2B marketing is coordinating humans, right? Sales and marketing alignment. Next, knowing the velocity of different channel types and campaign types is going to help you hit your financial goals, because you're going to have that sense of timing, not just ROI, not just if it's effective, but also getting that result as fast as possible. And it's going to let you ultimately spend your money more carefully and more wisely, because you're not using the wrong channel or campaign for the wrong goal. Next, so this puts together a lot of these concepts. You want to orchestrate the ideal buyer journey based on the results. You want to understand for this segment, enterprise versus SMB, this is the buyer journey. This is the number of interactions. Here are the people we're dealing with, the personas. And for SMB, here's what it looks like. Having that, going beyond a hypothesis, actually having data to show you that buyer journey is hugely strategic, and that's the future of B2B marketing. And finally, no answer lasts forever in marketing. That's what makes this fun. Is channels are always changing, new ideas are always emerging. It's a combination of creative and quantitative. So constantly keep testing and optimizing to get better and better, and see the results you're getting. And if it doesn't work, don't do it again. That's the beauty of being in a data-driven era of marketing. You can actually finally know if it works. So let's look at a buyer journey example, and this will be sort of the closing thought before we get to our final takeaways. So this is an actual buyer journey for BrightFunnel. So again, we're a revenue intelligence company, so these are insights and analytics. It's a pretty complicated concept compared to, say, a very simple product, because we're serving the whole marketing team, the CMO. And so there are several interactions. That's probably true for many of you for your products. In our case, looking at a data set that was about 6 months worth of data, the first touch, the optimal touch, was content syndication. So we're reaching people through promotional partners, but with content we've created and a targeted audience, in this case with an account-based marketing ebook. It could be in that period account-based marketing was a really hot topic, but that really worked for us. The next thing in the middle of the funnel was, again, this is where often the hard work happens, a variety of touches. This is a new category, it's a new concept. So for us, outreach by a human, an account development rep, is very important to get someone into the conversation. There's something they might have forgotten about. Getting them to come back to the website next, to then invest some time in really learning about what this concept is called attribution. Nurturing them over time, so we know the right timing. Getting them on a webinar, which is maybe even more time commitment than perusing a piece of content. And finally, the sort of the unexpected example I gave you earlier, what we found is actually worked to give them a fun incentive, a nominal gift card to get them to get out of their chair and take that demo. We also found in the multi-touch bottom of the funnel, so now we've gotten them through the funnel, accelerated them, how do we get them to actually close that deal, really engage. And here, not surprisingly, more customized interactions were important, whether it's an in-person interaction at a trade show, whether it's a customized message. We sent cookies with content to really get their attention, whether it's a field marketing event like that expensive customized steak dinner we talked about. This is the time to use it in that later funnel, or it's a case study that really talks about ROI and metrics. And finally, at the very last touch, at the very bottom of the funnel, we found, again, sales. This is where sales really comes in. This is where they're focused, making sure as they've taken the customer through the journey, they can now ask for the sale. So the outreach is important. More content around ROI and buying and pricing, things like that, become very, very important. So with that said, I promised I would leave plenty of time for questions, which I imagine a lot of you will have. These are the 5 takeaways I want you to think about. Number 1, the holy grail of marketing is about turning the buyer journey into a science. We've all always wanted this, and it's now finally becoming possible. Number 2, you can achieve that holy grail by orchestrating your customer journey, by leveraging the data and analytics that previously simply weren't available. Number 3, looking at single touch and multi-touch attribution is a great way to start, so you can know what to say and when to say it. Number 4, understanding the best path to sale. I call this the golden path. What is the best way to take a prospect through your buyer journey? Getting that insight and looking at individual accounts, looking at groups of accounts is very, very important, not just to optimize your marketing, but to get that alignment with sales, to get that executive level credibility on your actual business KPIs. Finally, constantly keep testing and optimizing. Try new channels, run experiments, new messages, have a way to measure it, otherwise it's not really an experiment. And have fun. That's what makes marketing so much fun for all of us. So with that said, I'll pause for Q&A and look forward to hearing questions.
Hi, Nadim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So first question, and again, just to remind everybody, if you have any questions, please put these in the chat box, and I'll read through them as they arrive. First question, Nadim. Which metrics are the most important to track?
So the great thing about what's possible today is you can actually attach to revenue and pipeline. So my answer as CEO of a company would be, you have to look at sourced and attributed revenue and pipeline. That's number 1. If you're running the marketing team, obviously you've got to take action on that data, and the revenue and pipeline happens after the fact, so that's not sufficient. You have to look at leading indicators. What are the number of leads that are being generated at the top of the funnel, et cetera, and matching the campaigns and channels to that. And then there's account metrics when you're getting into account-based marketing. There's velocity, but the first thing to start with is that revenue and pipe, to understand that and to understand the leading indicators for those things.
Next question. What are your tips for communicating learnings to greater sales and marketing organizations to implement change?
That is a fantastic question. So first of all, let me acknowledge that is a very big challenge that all of us have. We're changing behavior where you might have been relying on outdated single-touch view of the world, where almost certainly marketing is not getting enough credit. So you have a situation where the CMO might not have a true seat at the table. There's perception issues. So it is a transformation that's going to take time in some larger organizations. So for change management, I'll give you high-level tips and then some very specific tips. A high-level tip is to involve the right folks. So typically, that is certainly the CMO has to be involved, right? This is the sort of thing that's not going to happen without an executive level involvement in the marketing team. They have to buy into the idea that we've been operating on these old maps of the world, and now we realize that the world is not flat. Let's actually look at a real map of the world. That's needed. You need someone that's a right-hand person to the CMO oftentimes we're seeing titles like Director of Revenue Operations or Marketing Operations, someone who's really going to be the Switzerland on the team, that doesn't own a channel, isn't just going to want advertising to look good or events to look good. They're really going to be looking for the truth. That person is important. Often they own technology. Next, to get more specific, when you are rolling out an initiative to have data-driven marketing, you certainly want to involve sales. So typically that sales operations is a great partner. Sales executives are important. So maybe the head of sales or a couple of influential lieutenants, very important, because sales is really going to benefit from being more data-driven. But when they've been saying, for example, for a long time that, hey, my territory in the Netherlands is very different than what you guys are doing in the US. And oftentimes we marketers don't have time to listen to that or react to that. The data will actually prove that, and they're going to love you for it. And then you can say, look, we don't have infinite budget for one country. How about we do these three things? That conversation can happen. So sales is a very important part in the change management. And then the final piece of tactical advice I'll give is, this is true for probably any software rollout, but having champion users, so a group of users that are very data-driven, that really want the insights to become your power users, not just the operations folks or analysts or the BI team, but folks that are really power marketers, and then have them evangelize and propagate the message of how to measure things, how to be more data-driven to the rest of the team.
Are there any attribution reports besides first and last launch attribution?
So the question is, are there any attribution reports besides first and last touch? Absolutely. So we tried to keep it detailed, but also not too detailed. But if you're looking at a multi-touch attribution journey that's 30+ interactions, the key is to have a full visibility into that journey, all those 30 touches in that example. Once you have that information, which is not easy because you've got to understand who are the people, which touches are valid, which are not valid. So there's some data management, data transformation that has to happen. But once you understand that, with the full visibility, then you can measure with the multi-touch attribution, campaign performance, channel performance, content performance, account segment performance, the buyer journey. Those are all things that are examples of reports or insights you're going to want to take specific actions, but they're all powered by multi-touch attribution.
Can they work with ad server logs? If so, which ones?
So now it's getting maybe a bit more specific to our product. I want to keep it general, but the idea is that you have logs of advertising data, not just your CRM data, not just your data from your marketing automation tool. And in B2B, the bigger the company is, the chances are that they're doing lots of advertising. So that does present a challenge for some folks, where matching that data to their CRM data can be a challenge. It's certainly something we happen to do some of that as a business. We go directly, for example, into Google to get that data. But I would say for B2B, it's still early. Every company is different in terms of their quality of their data and in what form it resides. So in our case, we'd love to talk to someone and figure out if we can solve that problem, or if someone else can. There's a different way to solve that problem. But that data matching thing is definitely a key question to figure out. What I'd caution is, there's definitely a holy war in advertising, and oftentimes it's waged by the media companies themselves, some of whom are probably on this call, where the media companies are propagating ideas of view-through attribution and this and that. And those aren't bad things, but it would be like an email marketer taking credit for an email open. If an email marketer comes to me and says, hey, we've got all these opens, I want attribution, I would personally probably sort of tell them politely no. Similarly with advertising, of course there's some brand impact, of course there's view-through impact, but for B2B, unless you're really, really a large global company and spending multiple tens of millions of dollars, the idea is really to look at that direct response. So did that advertising result in a website visit, for example? Was there actually a click-through? there's enough of those that that's the right metric to look at. It's usually a good leading indicator of, is it also working for your brand? So my general caution is it's far more important to look at the full buyer journey. So think about that map metaphor. You want the map to get from, Spain to the New World. You don't need that first 10 miles to be in excruciating detail. You want the overall map. That's much more important than to say, I have all the data for the first 10 miles of my journey.
Next question. What is BrightFunnel's methodology? How do you collect data and assign the campaign/channel responsible for revenue?
That's a good question. So that is a key part of our secret sauce. I mean, it's not secret. I'll tell you in a second. But it is part of the value that a company like ours can add, which is when you're combining the data to get a picture of what's going on in the buyer journey, there are data challenges. So to unpack that, there's the idea of lead to account mapping, for example. So there are three kinds of people that exist in a CRM system, let's say. There are leads that are associated with an account because they've been converted, for example. There are contacts that are already part of the account. There are orphan leads, and these are leads that are, so the first two are the same kind of person. The second type is the orphan lead. These have no accounts. And the third type of person is a contact associated with an opportunity where sales rep attaches it. So you've got to look at all three kinds of people. So you need some sort of algorithm to match them. We have one, that there's others that are out there. That's part one. Part two, there's human decisions involved, and we can apply data science to it as well, but there's always going to be some human decision. For example, understanding time decay. How far back in time, timeline filtering, how far back in time do you want to go? That typically is a qualitative judgment that we're helping people make with best practices. What is next? What is a valid touch point? So this is where the example of that view through versus the email open is important. You probably don't want to count email opens as a valid touch point. You probably have that data, but it's not as interesting because there's so much data as the email click-through. You may have certain channels where your success is defined differently than other channels. So because the way that everyone uses various marketing workflow tools, marketing automation tools, is you buy it, it's maybe one person in a specific channel, you start using it. For example, marketing automation, you start blasting emails, which is great. You get value from that. But then 6 months later, when you want to measure it, you have all sorts of heterogeneity in your data, and creating the right business logic to make sure you handle that is really important. That's part of what we do. So that's an answer, a little bit of an answer to how we look at the data, which is very important. Next, there's a question of how do you do the actual attribution. So there are rules-based approaches to attribution. So this is where you're saying these are 30 touches, I'm going to weight them all equally. Or you can have specific rules by channel, weight things differently. And this is where I would say the vast majority of folks are not quite ready for that, to be candid, but that is sort of the more advanced version, and that can be powered by machine learning or data science. But what I advise people, even though I love getting into the advanced stuff, really starting with walking and crawling before you're running. So having the data, seeing the full journey, and then getting more and more definition on that. So again, the map metaphor, get a full picture first, and then get a better and better map, and take more and more actions.
Next question. Have you ever used Markov chain models for attribution? Sorry.
Wow. Now we have a real attribution gearhead, which is, yeah. It's funny. We in fact have. It is Markov chains are. We've done this in R&D. It's not part of our production platform, but it's one of the things we're researching without giving too much detail. For things that are paths or time series, it's a known good way to model the data. So it is one kind of mathematical model we're using to kind of understand what's the best path. How
would you compare that with the heuristic models?
So the short answer is the vast majority of the market right now is using, is flying 97% blind, and that number is not made up. It's vast majority are using single touch, and there's 20 touches, right? So they're literally ignoring 90+% of what's going on. So our mission, what motivates me is to get a marketing organization from, a really bad place to be more data-driven, so they can make better decisions and they can collaborate with sales, drive revenue. That's what we do. So that enabling the entire marketing team, democratizing access to insights. So given that democratizing access is our mission, we have to balance getting really wonky and advanced in the math models, which two people will understand, and the C-level person won't, and the individual marketers won't, versus making sure that the insights are accessible. So in other words, the majority of the market right now, what they need is it's the first and last mile, I call it. The first mile is getting the data in, making sure people have trust in the data, it has the right data sources, the right business logic, very, very important. And then the last mile is making sure the humans take action on the data. So it's not sitting in someone's in an ivory tower of an analytical team, but marketers are taking action. So those things typically favor an understandable, faster speed of action and understandability. What's happening in the middle, that's where the actual models come in. And for B2B companies, over-optimizing on the models when they're starting is probably not the right thing to do. And obviously we're doing R&D around machine learning, and there's different approaches that can make better and better insights, but ultimately the first and last mile I think are much more important.
Those are all the questions that we have. Nadeem, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share before we close off for today?
No, I just want to thank you all for joining in and for the great questions. This is certainly early in the journey of data-driven marketing. There's going to be a lot more data being produced, and analyzing that data is going to generate a lot of results. What we do obviously is we try to help business companies. And so if any of you are working with companies or work at companies or with companies through an agency, I'd certainly personally love to hear from you. My email is pretty easy to remember. It's ceo@brightfunnel.com. And if you reach out to me on email or Twitter at Nadeem Hussain or LinkedIn or whatever channel is your preference, but I'd love to hear from you guys.
Nadeem, I'd like to thank you and Cred PR for taking the time to present your work to our webcast crowd. And I'd like to thank everybody who was able to join us for today. Please remember, if you missed this webcast, or if you have anybody that's interested in this webcast and missed it, or for any other upcoming webcasts, we do have these available and posted, the recordings, 2 weeks after each event. Thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you for our next webcast next week. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good day.